She faked a pregnancy to trap me. The ultrasound pic was her downfall. 3 months ago, my life was, for lack of a better word, perfect. I'd met this woman and it felt like the universe had finally decided to cut me a break. We met at a friend's barbecue, one of those chance encounters that feels like it's been plucked straight from a romantic comedy. She was laughing, her head thrown back, and the sound cut through the summer noise like a melody. I was hooked before I even said hello. Our first date was a 12-hour marathon that started with coffee and ended with a moonlit walk on the beach. We talked about everything: our disastrous past relationships, our dreams for the future, our irrational fears. It was one of those instant connections, the kind people spend their whole lives searching for. The next 3 months were a blur of bliss. We were that couple, the one that finishes each other's sentences, that shares a single ice cream cone, that has inside jokes for days. She was incredible. She was smart, funny, ambitious, and seemed to be just as smitten with me as I was with her. She'd leave little notes in my lunchbox, text me good morning every single day without fail, and surprise me with tickets to see my favorite band. My friends loved her, my family adored her. She fit into my life like she was always meant to be there. The pace was fast, intoxicatingly so, but I chalked it up to finding the one. Why wait when you know? We were already talking about moving in together by the end of the second month, sketching out a future that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I was falling hard, and I was falling fast. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. It was a perfectly ordinary night. We were on my couch, a half-eaten pizza on the coffee table, some mindless reality show droning on in the background. She was quiet, more subdued than usual, tracing patterns on my knee. I asked her if she was okay, if she had a bad day at work. She just shook her head, a small, strange smile playing on her lips. She sat up, turning to face me fully, her eyes wide and serious. She took both of my hands in hers, her grip surprisingly tight. And then she said it, the 5 words that would detonate my carefully constructed world. She told me she was pregnant. The air left my lungs. The sounds from the TV, the city traffic outside my window, it all faded into a dull hum. All I could see was her face, her expectant, hopeful eyes. My mind raced, a chaotic slideshow of my future flashing before me. Diapers, sleepless nights, a college fund I didn't have. But underneath the tidal wave of panic, a strange sense of calm settled in. This was her, the woman I loved, and we were in this together. I took a deep breath, squeezed her hands back, and told her the only thing I could. I told her we would figure it out. I was ready. The moment the words left my mouth, the dynamic between us shifted. The quiet, serious woman from moments before vanished, replaced by a whirlwind of manic energy. She was up off the couch, pacing the living room floor, her hands flying as she started talking a mile a minute. It wasn't about the baby, not really. It was about the life the baby was supposedly going to give us. She pulled out her phone and started showing me 3-bedroom houses in suburbs I'd never even heard of. She was talking about minivans and school districts and how we'd need a bigger couch, one that was stain-resistant. It was overwhelming, a fire hose of future planning that I wasn't remotely prepared for. I tried to slow her down, to suggest we just take a breath and maybe focus on the immediate next step, like calling a doctor. But she was already 10 steps ahead.
Her mind a fortress of carefully constructed plans. Over the next few days, the intensity only grew. She created a shared Pinterest board called Our Little Miracle, which was already filled with hundreds of pins for nursery decor, baby names, and most alarmingly, wedding dresses. Every conversation, no matter how it started, circled back to the baby. We'd be talking about what to have for dinner, and she'd suddenly interject with, they say you crave weird things when you're pregnant. Last night, I dreamed I was eating chalk. I'd laugh it off, but a tiny nagging feeling was starting to take root in the back of my mind. It felt less like we were preparing for a child and more like she was executing a business plan, and I was the key asset she needed to acquire. My spidey senses, as my best friend would call them, were tingling. It was all too perfect, too fast, too performative. Then she presented the ultrasound. She came over one evening with a framed 4x6 photo, a triumphant look on her face. She had printed it at a kiosk at the pharmacy, she explained, so we could put it on the nightstand. I took the frame from her, my heart thudding in my chest. This was it, the proof, the tangible evidence of our new reality. I stared at the black and white image. It looked just like the ultrasounds I'd seen in movies and on TV, a grainy, staticky swirl of shapes and shadows. She pointed to a small, barely discernible smudge in the center. "There's the head," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "And that little flicker right there, that's the heartbeat." I looked, I truly did, trying to see what she saw. But all I could see was a generic image that could have belonged to anyone. She watched my face, her expression eager for my reaction. I mustered up the most convincing smile I could, telling her it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. But as she turned to find the perfect spot on the bookshelf for it, I held the picture in my hand, and a cold, undeniable thought crept into my brain. I had to know for sure. The guilt was immediate and suffocating. Who was I to doubt her? This was the woman I loved, the mother of my future child, and here I was entertaining these dark, cynical thoughts. I felt like a monster. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to stop, to trust her, to be the supportive partner she needed. But that other part, the primal gut instinct part, wouldn't let it go. It was the speed of it all, the clinical precision of her planning, the way the ultrasound photo felt more like a prop than a precious memento. I had to quiet the voice in my head, one way or another. The next morning, while she was at work, I found myself alone in my apartment with the framed picture. My hands were shaking as I took it out of the frame. I told myself I was just being thorough, that this was a normal thing to do in the digital age. I was just verifying. I laid the glossy photo on my kitchen counter, the morning light glinting off its surface. I pulled out my phone, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I opened the camera, carefully framed the shot to avoid any glare, and snapped a picture of the ultrasound. My thumb hovered over the icon from my web browser. This was the point of no return. If I did this, if I searched for this image, I was officially crossing a line from trusting boyfriend to paranoid skeptic. I took a deep, shaky breath and clicked. The browser opened, and I went straight to Google Images. I tapped the little camera icon in the search bar, the search by image feature that felt both futuristic and deeply invasive. I selected the photo I had just taken from my camera roll and hit search. For a second, nothing happened. The loading circle spun, and my entire life felt like it was hanging in the balance. Then, the results populated. My eyes scanned the screen, expecting to see nothing, or maybe links to stock photo sites, but that's not what came up. Right at the top of the page, with a bold blue hyperlink, was the first result. It was a blog post. The title read, "Our little peanut is on the way, 12-week ultrasound." And underneath the title, in smaller print, was the author's name, by Jennifer, mommy of 2. And the date, August 4th, 2011. My blood ran cold. I clicked the link. The blog loaded, a cheerful, pastel-colored site filled with posts about toddler tantrums and potty training. And there, embedded in the post from over a decade ago, was the exact same ultrasound photo. The same grainy swirl, the same little smudge, the same flicker she had pointed to. It wasn't our baby. It was Jennifer's, from 2011. The world tilted on its axis. The perfect relationship, the future, the baby, it was all built on a lie so brazen, so easily disprovable that it was almost impressive. I stared at the screen, the cheerful words of a stranger from the past confirming my worst fears. The ultrasound wasn't a picture of our future. It was her downfall. The next few hours were a blur of cold, silent fury. I sat at my kitchen table, the phone screen glowing in front of me, toggling between her ultrasound and Jennifer's 2011 blog post. The anger wasn't hot or explosive. It was a deep, chilling wave that washed over me, leaving me feeling hollowed out. I replayed every moment of the last week, of the last 3 months. The love bombing, the accelerated timeline, the way she expertly wove herself into every facet of my life. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, it was a hostile takeover. Every I love you, every thoughtful gesture was now tainted, recontextualized as a calculated move in a game I hadn't even known we were playing. I felt like an idiot, a fool who had been so desperate for love that I'd ignored every flashing red light. My first instinct was to pack a bag and disappear, to block her number, change my locks, and pretend the last 3 months had never happened. But as I sat there, a different feeling began to take hold. A cold, steely resolve. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had put on a performance for me, and now it was my turn to take the stage. I wanted to see her face when the curtain fell. I wanted to watch the lie crumble in real time. I formulated a plan. I would act normal. I would be the doting, expectant father she had created. I would play my part perfectly, right up until the final scene. I took a screenshot of the blog post, saving it to a hidden folder on my phone. My weapon was loaded. That evening, she came over, bubbling with excitement. She walked in carrying a thick baby name book, slamming it down on the coffee table like a gavel. "Okay," she announced, "I've been thinking. If it's a boy, I like a strong name. If it's a girl, I'm leaning towards something classic." She plopped down on the couch beside me, grabbing my hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Can you feel it? I think I can feel the fluttering already," she said, her eyes wide with manufactured wonder. I forced a smile, my heart a block of ice in my chest. "Those are great," I said, my voice sounding eerily calm. "You know, I was thinking today about the doctor's appointment. We should probably schedule the next one, right? Maybe I can come with you this time." Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, a micro-expression of panic that she quickly covered with a laugh. "Oh, you don't have to do that. It's so boring. Just a lot of poking and prodding." I pressed on, my voice still gentle. "No, I insist. I want to be there for everything. I was just looking at the picture again today, and it just made me so happy. I want to see the little peanut again." Her eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. "Speaking of the picture," I said, pulling out my phone, "I was showing it to my buddy at work, and he said his wife's ultrasound looked totally different. So I did a little search online, just to see what other ones look like, and you are not going to believe what I found." I turned the phone to face her, the bright screen illuminating her rapidly paling face. There it was, Jennifer's blog, the proof, the end. The silence that followed was deafening. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket that smothered all the air in the room. She stared at the phone, her mouth slightly agape, her face draining of all color until it was a chalky, ashen white. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Her eyes, which had been so full of life and manufactured joy just minutes before, were now wide with a pure, unadulterated terror. Then the dam broke. But it wasn't a confession. It was a torrent of denial and deflection. She snatched the phone from my hand, her fingers flying across the screen as if she could somehow erase the truth with a frantic swipe. "This is fake," she stammered, her voice high and thin. "This is a lie. Someone photoshopped it. They're trying to break us up." When that didn't work, she switched tactics. The tears came, sudden and dramatic, streaming down her face in perfect crocodile tear tracks. "How could you?" she wailed, her voice cracking with practiced sorrow. "How could you do this to me? To us? I'm carrying your child, and you're online accusing me of this? You don't trust me. You've never trusted me." She tried to turn it back on me, to paint me as the villain, the paranoid, untrusting boyfriend who was attacking her in her most vulnerable state. It was a breathtaking performance, a masterclass in emotional manipulation, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I just sat there, my arms crossed, my expression unreadable. I let her exhaust herself, let her run through her entire repertoire of lies and accusations. Finally, when the tears subsided and she was left with nothing but hiccuping, ragged breaths, she saw it in my eyes. She saw that I knew. The performance was over. The audience had walked out. The fight went out of her all at once, and she slumped back onto the couch, a defeated puppet with its strings cut. And then the real story came out. It wasn't a grand, passionate confession. It was a quiet, pathetic mumble. She admitted it. She said she had been scared. She felt me pulling away, that I wasn't as committed as she was. She said she thought if she just gave me a push, a reason to stay, that everything would fall into place.
She had found the old blog post years ago and saved the picture, just in case. It was a contingency plan, a trump card she never thought she'd have to play. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I just love you so much," she whispered, the words sounding like ash in her mouth. "I just didn't want to lose you." But it wasn't about love. It was about control. It was about a fear so profound that she was willing to build a life on a foundation of quicksand. The confession hung in the air between us, ugly and irrevocable. There was nothing left to say. The lie was exposed, and the relationship was dead. After her confession, there was nothing left to do but start the cleanup. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just felt a profound, soul-deep weariness. I looked at the woman sitting on my couch, a stranger I had once thought I knew, and told her she needed to leave. The finality in my voice must have finally broken through her delusions, because she didn't argue. She just nodded, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The process of her leaving was a surreal, silent ballet. I watched as she moved around the apartment, gathering the various bits and pieces of her life she had integrated into mine. A toothbrush from the bathroom, a sweater from the closet, the ridiculously expensive face cream from my nightstand. Each item she removed felt like a small weight being lifted from my shoulders. When she was done, she stood by the door, a trash bag full of her belongings at her feet. She turned to me one last time, her face a mask of regret. "I'm sorry," she said, the words sounding hollow and meaningless. I just nodded, holding the door open. I didn't trust myself to speak. I watched her walk down the hallway, her silhouette shrinking until she disappeared into the elevator. I closed the door, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden, oppressive silence. The apartment felt different. It felt contaminated, like a crime scene. I could still smell her perfume on the couch cushions, see the faint outline of the framed ultrasound on the bookshelf. I knew I couldn't stay here tonight. I spent the next hour in a frenzy of my own, a digital and physical exorcism. I went through my phone, deleting every photo of her, every text message, every memory. I blocked her number, her social media accounts, and even the number of her best friend, just in case. I took the baby name book she had left on the coffee table and threw it in the trash. I wiped down every surface, opened all the windows to let the stale air out, and lit a candle, trying to burn away the scent of her lies. It felt cathartic, a ritual of purification. I was erasing her from my life, scrubbing away the stain of her deception. As I worked, my phone buzzed repeatedly on the counter. A flood of texts from an unknown number, then from her best friend, then from her sister. They were all variations on the same theme. How could you do this to her when she's pregnant? You're a monster for abandoning her. She's a wreck. You need to call her. The manipulation was a family affair. I didn't read them all. I just blocked the numbers and turned my phone off. I had to get away. I grabbed a bag, threw some clothes in it, and drove to my buddy's place, needing the comfort of a friend who knew the whole sordid story. The storm was over, but the wreckage was vast. I was free, but I felt utterly and completely alone. A week passed. A month. The dust settled, and life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. The initial shock and anger gave way to a quiet, reflective sadness. I wasn't mourning the loss of her, not really. I was mourning the loss of the idea of her, the perfect, dream-come-true woman I had thought I'd found. I was mourning the 3 months of my life that had been stolen, invested in a complete fiction. But as the days turned into weeks, the sadness began to recede, replaced by something else, clarity. The experience had been a brutal education, but it was one I desperately needed. I started to see the red flags I had willfully ignored in the beginning. The love bombing wasn't a sign of intense affection, it was a tool for attachment. The rush to talk about marriage and babies wasn't a sign of a shared future, it was a blueprint for entrapment.
I learned a valuable, if painful, lesson about intuition. That nagging feeling in my gut, the one I had dismissed as paranoia, was my most trusted advisor. It was my internal alarm system, and I had silenced it at my own peril. I learned that true partnership isn't about speed or intensity. It's about a slow, steady build, a foundation of trust that is earned over time, not manufactured overnight. I also learned about self-respect. I had been so desperate to be the good guy, the supportive partner who would step up, that I had almost sacrificed my own future, my own sanity on the altar of a lie. Being a good partner doesn't mean abandoning your own judgment. It means having the courage to ask questions, even when the answers are terrifying. I'm not jaded. I haven't sworn off relationships forever, but I am wiser. I'm more cautious, more discerning. I know what to look for now. I know the difference between someone who is excited about a future with you and someone who is just excited about a future, and you happen to be a convenient placeholder. Her downfall wasn't just the ultrasound picture she stole from a 2011 blog. Her downfall was her own deceit, her own desperation. She thought she was building a cage to trap me, but in the end, she only locked herself in a prison of her own lies. As for me, I dodged a bullet, a massive, relationship-destroying, life-altering bullet. And for that, in a strange way, I'm grateful. The story of her and me isn't a tragedy, it's a cautionary tale. It's the story of how a lie, a simple, stupid, easily disprovable lie, blew up in her face and set me free. My story isn't over. In fact, I feel like it's just getting started. And this time, I'll be writing it myself.